Hello dear students, a very warm welcome to this session. As you know, ISET is round the corner. It's going to happen in a few days. So in today's session, we are going to share some tips and tricks for handling the reading comprehension section in ISET. Okay, so we will start with answers to some common questions that you may have in your mind, like how do I increase my reading speed? How do I understand the meaning of a passage very quickly? How do I eliminate options and come to the right answer, etc. After that, we will discuss a few questions similar to the pattern of questions in ISET. Okay, so let us start. Let us take a look at the reading comprehension section in ISET. In TS-ICET, we have 3 passages with 5 questions each, and in AP-ICET, it is 4 passages with 5 questions each. Of course, this number may change at any time, but this is the broad pattern. Okay. Typically, the reading comprehension passages that occur in ISET are 200 to 250 words long. The topics may be anything, but usually they are related to economics, business. We have also seen some passages on basic science or latest research findings, technology, environment, even psychology. Okay. Now, the questions are usually directly based on the passage. You will not be required to do in-depth inference, etc. There may be in each passage one question which is slightly difficult and not very direct. Okay, we will discuss the question types a little later in the session. We will go into more detail on the question types. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that you need to understand the central idea and also the author's purpose and the tone that the author has used in the passage. Okay, so very often students tell us that in school, in reading comprehension, they never read the complete passage. I'm sure most of you can relate to this also, right? Yeah, most students never bother to read the passage. They look at the question and they try to pick the answer. Now, this is possible when the questions are based on specific details in the passage. However, in ISET, many of the questions may require, though they are very direct, they may require an overall understanding of the tone and purpose of the author, and most importantly, the central idea. So, we advise you to read the entire passage before attempting the questions. This is a must in all higher level exams. Okay, you need to quickly read through the entire passage before attempting the questions. And an ideal reading speed would be around 150 words per minute, because the passages are 200 to 250 words long. So if you have a reading speed of 150 words per minute, then you can easily finish reading the passage under 2 minutes, right? You won't take 2 minutes to finish reading the passage, and after that you can answer the questions. That reading speed should be fine. Okay. So, most students typically start with a reading speed of 60 to 100 words per minute. Okay, most of us in India are not native speakers of English. We have learned it as a second language. Some of us may have learned it as a third language. So, most students will have a reading speed of 60 to 100 words per minute. Okay, so we need to bring up your readings. You need to bring up your reading speed. How will you do it? There are certain tricks for reading faster. The first thing is, you may have heard this word skimming being used everywhere. Many people use this word skimming. However, when it comes to the meaning of skimming, some people think that it means reading the first and last lines of the passage, or some people think it means to read one line of every paragraph. That is not skimming. Okay, even if you are skimming, you need to read the entire para, but while skimming you run through the para, gathering the central idea and not spending too much time on details, or rather while reading you are able to understand what are the important parts of the passage. You focus on those parts and quickly run through the other parts. That is skimming. What is scanning? Scanning means to stop and focus on the important points. When you see that something seems to be important, or the author is taking a strong stand in a particular place, you just focus a little more there, because that is important for understanding the central idea. Okay, now in-depth scanning can also happen when you answer the questions. Okay, when you answer the questions, sometimes you may be confused between two options. In that case, you can go back to the required part of the passage, stop and scan, so that you can eliminate one option and arrive at the correct answer. Then other tips for reading faster include to look out for connectives, transition words, etc. Okay, connectives are thought extenders, words that extend the thought. So some of these words may be moreover, and, right, furthermore, and things like that. Okay, or they may be talking of, let us say, the advantages of artificial intelligence. So you may see expressions like another advantage is, right, or yet another benefit is. Things like these are connectives, or they are idea extensions, thought extensions. Then when you see words like but, yet, however, etc., you know that these indicate a contrast, right? So when you see words like this, immediately try to connect. Okay, what did the author say so far? Maybe he was saying something positive about technology. Then he says but. So what does it mean? Now he is going to show a contrast. So whatever comes after but may be a negative comment about technology. This is how you predict what the author is going to say, and it helps you improve your reading speed. Okay. Now, in many passages you will see long lists or many examples for the same concept. Right? Lists as in there may be many words connected with commas, or the author may use several sentences to list out something, right? So when you see these lists and examples, you may not need to read them word by word. You just need to understand what the author is trying to show there. Okay. Now, another very important tip is to pause after every few sentences and make mental notes. Why am I saying this? Because many students tell me that when they read certain passages on certain topics, the first para is all good, they are able to read and understand. By the time they reach the second paragraph, they find that their mind has gone for a walk. And by the time they reach the third paragraph, their mind has flown away and they don't know what they have been reading so far. Has that happened to you? I'm sure it has happened with all of us at some point, right? There are certain topics that we find difficult to focus on and our concentration starts wavering. So that is why after reading every 2-3 sentences, you have to stop and quickly ask yourself, what did I read so far? It is like a sum up of what you read so far. Okay, the gist of what you read so far. The good thing about this is by the time you finish reading the passage, you would have asked yourself many times, what did I read so far? What did I read so far? So at the end of the passage, if you ask yourself, what did I read so far? The summary of all these ideas together will give you the central idea of the passage. And you should be able to sum up this passage in like a few words. Okay, that will be the central idea. Now the last 2 points here go together. You need not waste time on specific details and you should not try to memorize things in the passage. Again, students sometimes tell me that my memory is not great. So after reading the passage, I forget a lot of things, and when I answer the questions, I have to go back to the passage. But believe me, this is how it will be for everybody, okay? You are not expected to waste time trying to memorize the details in the passage. As long as you have got the central points in the passage, it is more than enough. Then when you answer the questions, you will of course have to go back to the passage for some questions and check what is written in the passage, compare it with the options. Especially when there are more than one potentially correct answer. Okay, that is, there may be some confusing options. Then you will have to go back to the passage and check what details are written there. So do not waste time lingering over little details. Okay. Now, what are the question types that you can expect in ISET? One of the most important question types is main idea, central idea, purpose of the author, right? What is the author's primary argument, and what would be a suitable title for this passage? Title question is also related to the central idea. Okay, how do you answer this question type? The central idea is not something which lies in a particular sentence. Okay, students ask me, can we find the central idea in the first para or the last para? Nothing like that. Sometimes the author may write the central idea either in the introduction or the conclusion. However, very often the central idea is something that will evolve like a snowball. You know how a snowball forms, no? Yeah? Like that, the central idea will evolve slowly as you read through the passage. Little by little, then by the time you reach the end of the passage, the central idea will have formed in your mind. Okay, so after this is why we tell you, you should read the passage before trying to attempt the questions, because there may be more than one question which is related to the central idea. There could be a central idea question and a title question. You don't want to get those wrong, or you don't want to miss out on those questions. So it is important that you read through the passage. Okay, so title of the passage is also closely related to the central idea. So a trick that the examiners may, the people who set the questions may play here is, they may give you some titles which are related to some sub-ideas or secondary ideas. But you have to ignore those options and go for the option that reflects the central idea. Same thing with the main idea questions also. Okay, they may have mentioned certain examples or any secondary ideas in the passage, and for the main idea question, some of the options may be related to these secondary ideas, but you have to pick the option that is closest to the main idea. So it's very important that you understand the main idea of the passage. Then majority of the questions in ISET are usually on secondary idea or specific details. Okay, so in para 2 the author says that, or what is the author's argument on anything, a particular part of the passage. Or they may ask factual questions. According to the passage, the population density of India has what? Grown from this year to this year, reduced from this year to this year. Whatever is given in the passage, they will ask you. So for these questions, like I said, if you have an excellent memory, you may be able to remember what is written in the passage. However, very often the options may be slightly confusing, and it is advisable that you go back to the passage and just check. So while reading the passage, anyway the passage is only 200 to 250 words long, not a very lengthy passage. So while reading the passage, you make a note of, like I said, after every 2-3 sentences, this is what I read, this is what I read. So when they ask you about a particular detail, you will know where to look for the answer, right? So quickly go to that part and just check before you pick the answer. Fine. Then okay, some of the other question types that are missing on this slide, but some of the other question types you can expect are tone of the passage. Okay, you may have questions that are based on the tone of the passage. What is the author's tone in this passage directly, or they may ask you, in this passage the author is what? Okay, or this passage can be best described as what? So in this last example that I said, this passage can be best described as, we are actually looking for the style of the passage. Okay, the style of the passage may be descriptive, where the author has included a lot of details, or it can be narrative. Narrative means like a story. The author is narrating an incident or anything like a story from the author's perspective. Or it can be analytical. Analytical means it may include some data, some comparison. The author may come to certain conclusions or share some findings, etc. Okay, or it may be expository in tone, where the author is trying to explain a concept in great detail. So these are some of the styles or tones that are commonly tested in ISET. Okay, now that we have discussed some tips, let us look at a few passages and try to answer the questions. Yeah, are you ready? Here you go. The first passage. Tourism is an invisible export. Now, when you see usages like this, don't just go with the flow. Ask yourself if you understood. Take a few seconds to really understand what the author is saying. Invisible export. Why? Obviously, it's not invisible. Tourists are not invisible. But tourism is not generally considered an export. But it is a practice where from each country you send people abroad, people go abroad, right? So in that sense it is an invisible export. Okay, it is sadly mistaken for luxury by most governments. Why sadly? Why do you think the author has used this word sadly? Because if it is mistaken for a luxury by the governments, then they will not do enough to make it accessible to the common man. They won't do enough to support or promote tourism, right? There is a lack of understanding of the power of tourism. The tragic incidents of 11th September 2001 drove home to most nations. Drove home is an expression which means made clear. It drove home means it made it very clear. What did it make clear? The fact that the economy of most nations is tied into travel and tourism. You all know what happened on 11th September 2001, right? So, yes, the Twin Towers. So now, why did this have an impact on tourism? Obviously, after this incident, tourism suffered a major setback. People were reluctant to travel for a while, and from this passage we can infer that this decline in tourism affected the economy of most nations. That is why they are saying that these incidents made it clear to the world that travel and tourism are very important for the economy of countries. Okay. Tourism also happens to be the world's largest generator of jobs. It provides direct and indirect employment to over 250 million people, and 1 out of every 9 workers. So here what we saw is the benefits of tourism, right? However, the problem of tourism is that it is invisible as an industry. They said that here also. It cannot be seen as an export, right? And also young. It is also relatively young. And that is why it is barely understood. So these are the problems of tourism. Okay. So what did we read so far? The importance of tourism and the problems faced by tourism, that is, it is invisible and relatively new, and we saw the example of 11th September 2001 and its impact on the economy of nations. The number of tourists worldwide grew from 500 million in 1992, okay, so number of tourists worldwide grew in this period to over 700 million in 2002. But India's share, now when you see but here, like we said earlier, here they are talking of a positive trend in tourism. It grew. Then when the author uses the word but, we know that the author is going to say something negative, right? India's share of world tourist traffic is only 0.38% during the last decade or so. Though there was a growth in tourism during this period, India's share of world tourist traffic was very, very small. Okay? Despite its rich cultural heritage and so much to showcase, India has so much to present to the world, still its share in tourism is very small. It is therefore time to project India's hidden potential in the proper form. Okay? So that we can attract more tourists. Yeah, I hope that is clear to everybody. Next, the main value of tourism at heritage sites, okay, lies in that it serves as an introduction to the historical and cultural background of the place, which people might never approach otherwise. So this is the importance of tourism at heritage sites, monuments, etc. Okay, it introduces others to the historical and cultural background of that particular place. Keeping in view our aim of sustainable tourism. Sustainable means, you know, right? Something that can continue in the long run and something that is not harmful to the environment or future generations. Okay. Keeping in view our aim of sustainable tourism, we have to protect, preserve, conserve and restore our heritage. Only if we protect our heritage can we have sustainable tourism in the long run. For a long time, we have taken our tangible historical heritage for granted. Tangible means something you can feel and see. So we are speaking of our monuments, our heritage sites, etc. We have taken this tangible heritage for granted. To take for granted means to not take it seriously, to ignore. Okay? To say, it is there, we don't have to worry about it. That is called taking for granted. Little realizing means not realizing that without proper care and preservation, these treasures are in the danger of being lost to us and to the world. So what are we not aware of? The importance of caring for and preserving these historical sites. Okay. So this is the passage. What did we talk about? First we spoke about tourism being very important for all nations and at the same time it being invisible as an industry and very young, so we don't understand its importance. Then we spoke about the global trend of rising tourism. At the same time, India accounts for a very, very small percent of of global tourism. So we need to protect our cultural heritage and showcase it to the world. We need to take care of our historical sites and monuments, because this is the introduction of our culture to the rest of the world, and without taking care of these we might lose them forever. This is the essence of what we read so far. Let us look at the questions. The problem of tourism is that, please look at the options, it is labor intensive. Does the passage say that? No. Labor intensive means it involves a lot of manpower. No. It is an invisible industry. It is straight away directly mentioned in the passage that is the problem of tourism. It degrades the environment. It does not say so. Later it says for sustainable tourism this is what we should do. But the passage does not say that tourism degrades the environment. It is a drain on foreign exchange. No. So our answer is 2. Okay, direct question. The tragic incident of 11th September 2001 made nations realize the importance of. So again a direct question. Let us look at the options. Technological advancement, is it mentioned in this passage? No. Tourism, yes, that is what the passage says, right? Here, the tragic incidents drove home the fact that the economy of most nations is tied to travel and tourism. So, tourism is the answer. Cyber security not mentioned. Cryptocurrency not mentioned. The answer is tourism. Okay. With respect to our historical heritage, we failed to realize that. Last para, what did we fail to realize? That without proper care and preservation, these treasures are in the danger of being lost to us. So, they can be tourist attractions. Did we fail to realize that? No, it doesn't say that we do not know that they are tourist attractions. No, they are sustainable. Some students may be confused with this option, but what the author is saying is, for sustainable tourism, we need to preserve and protect our historical heritage. So, it is not that we do not realize they are sustainable. We have to make sure that they will be sustainable in the future. Okay. They are treasures in need of care and protection. Absolutely. Not all people are interested in historical sites. Does it say that? No. So, 3 is the answer. Okay. According to the author, tourism at heritage sites introduces people to, if you remember it is okay, if you don't remember just go and see here. It serves as an introduction to the historical and cultural background of the place. So, to the historical and cultural background of the place, very direct. Luxury tourism, no. Environment consciousness, not mentioned. To taking care of their heritage, that is different. We have to take care of our heritage, but when they say introduces people, they are talking of tourists. It introduces people or tourists to the history and culture of the place. So this is also not correct. Our answer is option 1. According to the author, between 1992 and 2002, the number of tourists worldwide. If you miss this worldwide, you will think the question is about what happened in India. No, worldwide. Worldwide, what happened? Number of tourists grew. Okay. So, grew means increased, not decreased, not remained static or remained the same. Cannot be inferred from the passage is not correct. We could infer it from the passage. So, the answer is increased. Okay. Next passage. When you begin with the end in mind, you give a different perspective. End in mind means the goal in mind. Okay. You give a different perspective. You have a different view on something. Says Stephen R. Covey in his The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Very famous work. Okay. If your end is to gain a job through a walk-in interview, if your end means aim, okay? Here end doesn't mean the end of something. End means the final aim, goal. We can call it goal also. Okay, so if your end is to gain a job through a walk-in interview, there are some effective ways by which you can achieve it. Okay, so walk-in interview means you know, right? It's an interview where you are not called in advance. The employer will probably place an advertisement somewhere, and whoever wants to respond can just arrive at the venue of the interview at that given time and place, and they can participate in the interview. So it's a random interview where anybody can go, anybody with the required qualifications can go and participate. So if you want to gain a job through a walk-in interview, there are some effective ways by which you can achieve it. Integrity, that is honesty, being true to yourself, having good values, good communication skill, and intelligence are the key attributes interviewers look for in a candidate. Key attributes, key aspects, factors, characteristics. Okay, what are the key attributes? Let us highlight these. Integrity, communication skill, intelligence. Making a good impression on the interviewer is the first part of the interview. A person is assessed from the moment he walks into the room. Primarily, the candidate has to select an appropriate dress that suits the occasion. So when it is an interview, you have to be dressed formally and appropriately. He doesn't have to dress fashionably, but should be dressed decently. We call this being presentable. You don't have to be fashionable, but you have to be presentable in an interview, right? Your dressing should be formal and appropriate. Carelessness in the way of dressing may suggest that he has little respect for the interviewer. Okay, carelessness may suggest that this person, the candidate, does not respect the interviewer. Also, he should be courteous. Courteous means polite and have manners. Arrive on time, say thank you and please whenever necessary. These are the signs of courtesy. At the same time, he should not be overly enthusiastic or over anxious to please the interviewer. While you should be polite and well-mannered, don't try excessively to make the interviewer happy. It can seem very fake or unreal, right? Doing a little bit of homework always helps in an interview. Homework means preparation, okay? While applying for a job, it is always good to find out as much as he can about the organization. So this is the homework that they are talking about. Find out whatever you can about the organization. It shows initiative. Initiative means the drive to do things on your own. Okay. It can also give more depth to his answers. So if you have found out about the organization you are trying to work for, then your answers will reflect the depth of your knowledge. But he should be careful not to bluff. Bluff means to lie, okay, or to talk of things which you don't know properly. Even if you don't know the answer, you just say something. That is called bluffing, okay, trying to pretend that you know the answer. Lies are usually quickly found out. That is why you should not bluff. Regarding personal details also, it is better to admit any previous failure in exams or previous jobs. Okay, so this is an important point. It is better to be honest about any previous jobs you have done or any previous failures in exams, etc. Acknowledging the mistakes can show a person's strength of character. Everyone makes mistakes. If you are able to admit your mistakes that you made in the past, it will show your strength of character. Fine. So what is this passage about? It is about how to prepare for an interview and how to make a good impression on the interviewer. That is all. And the beginning there's a little advice on focusing on your goal, right? Let's look at the questions now. Dash in dress etiquette may indicate that the interview has little respect for the interviewer. Now, none of these words are from the passage, so we know that we need to pick the synonym of a word given in the passage. Carelessness in the way of dressing. So, we have to find a synonym for carelessness. Okay? Let us look at the options. Meticulousness. What is meticulous? Meticulous means paying attention to detail, taking care of every little detail. Okay, so is that a word for carelessness? No, it is the opposite of carelessness. Tidiness in dress etiquette. Tidy, being neat and tidy. Is that the meaning of carelessness? No. Punctiliousness. Punctiliousness means punctuality. Okay, being on time, being very prompt and punctual. Does that mean careless? No. Sloppiness. Yes. Sloppiness is carelessness. Okay, being shabbily dressed, not taking care of your grooming is called sloppiness. So, option 4 is the answer we are looking for. According to the passage, an interviewer may get a good impression of a person's character. Here, acknowledging the mistakes can show a person's strength of character. This is where character has been mentioned. Making a good impression is the first part of an interview, but how does he make an impression? It is written in the last sentence, right? So let us see. If he arrives for the interview on time, though that is you may get confused. These are all important. You show courtesy by arriving on time. But the question is, how does the interviewer get a good impression of your character? The question is not about your courteousness. Okay, so this is not the answer. If he comes dressed fashionably, the passage says you don't have to dress fashionably. If he acknowledges his mistake, yes, that shows your strength of character. If he can speak well about the organization he has applied for, that is not mentioned in the passage. Your answer is option 3. Okay. A candidate who has dash will be well informed about the company he has applied for a job. What does it say here? Doing a little bit of homework here, it can give more depth to your answers, but it also shows initiative. So somebody who tries to find out about the company has what quality? Initiative. That is directly mentioned in the passage. The other options are generosity. Generosity means being willing to share what you have with others, or being charitable, being kind enough to give something away to others who need it. Okay, someone who is willing to give away some of their wealth or anything that they may possess is called generous, large-hearted. That is not applicable here. Extravagance is spending money very lavishly. That also does not is not relevant here. Thriftiness is the opposite of extravagance. Thriftiness means not spending much, but this is about being well informed about the company. So none of the other options are relevant. The answer is 3. Next, the essential qualities that the interviewers are looking for in an applicant are, let's see, intelligence, it is mentioned, communication skill is mentioned, integrity is mentioned here. Integrity, good communication skill and intelligence. So the answer is all the above. Okay. Answer is option 4. Which word in the passage means recognizing? If you don't know the meaning of the word, you can go and look in the passage to understand the context. But this is a very common word. All of you know this word, recognizing. Let us look at the options. Speaking, recognizing means speaking? No. Acknowledging. Yes, to recognize your weaknesses or to recognize your mistakes is to acknowledge it. That is one meaning of recognizing. Arriving? No. Containing? No. So the right answer is acknowledging. Okay. Okay. Now let us look at the third passage. The questions in this passage are along the lines of AP-ICET. Okay, the passages we looked at so far were similar to the passages that appear in TS-ICET. This is on the lines of AP-ICET. It is not very different. Okay, the main difference is that AP-ICET includes a wider variety of topics like psychology, etc. And the questions may be slightly more difficult in terms of the difficulty of the options. The options may be slightly closer. Other than that, there is not much of a difference. Yes, and the passages are slightly longer here. Okay, they may go up to 300 words, 350 words. Let us read this passage first. One of the ways in which the history of the development of Western psychology has been described is in terms of 4 forces. Okay, the history of the development of Western psychology has been described in terms of 4 forces. The first force. So now we know there are 4 forces. So this is the first force. Is the empirically based. Empirically means based on evidence and data, facts. Experimental behavioral psychology, which originally developed from the adaptation of the scientific methodology of late 19th century natural sciences to philosophy of mind to form the then new discipline of psychology. So this was the first school of thought in psychology, that is experimental behavioral. It was based on the scientific method, and this was the school of thought which formed the subject area called psychology. When was this? It was in the 19th century. Okay, fine. This school of thought has been very influential since the beginning of psychology. From Wundt, the founder of the first scientific school of psychology in Germany, to development of behaviorism through Watson and Skinner in the US, and well into the present time, scientific psychology. So what they are calling as scientific psychology is the same as experimental behavioral psychology. Okay, the two are the same. Has had a strong presence in academia. Academia is teaching, universities, as well as in the social arena. Okay, this was the first force. Okay, despite many contributions. So these were the contributions of scientific psychology, right? All these, the first scientific school of psychology, development of behaviorism. Okay, these were the applications. Despite these contributions, so this is a contrast word, unfortunately, this orientation has only focused on the outward aspect of human existence, that is, that which is observable objectively. In short, behavior and speech. So now we can see that this is a disadvantage or weakness of the scientific school, that it focuses only on the observable aspects of human existence such as behavior and speech. In this approach, human beings are at best objectified. They are treated as objects, as biopsychosocial organisms, and are studied much in the same way as other natural phenomena such as plants and animals are studied. So the disadvantage of this school is it only considers the observable phenomena such as behavior and speech, and it treats human beings as any other creature would be treated. It doesn't treat humans specially. Psychoanalysis comprises the second force in the history of psychology. Okay. From the discovery of the unconscious mind, the innovative contributions of Freud, Sigmund Freud is considered one of the founders of psychoanalysis, to all later psychologists who in some way criticized and tried to improve Freud's work, Jung, Adler, Horney, Reich, to name a few. This movement in psychology, which movement? Psychoanalysis, has been greatly influential in the development of both theoretical and clinical psychology. Okay, so these are the contributions of psychoanalysis. It helped in the development of psychology as theory and also practice. Clinical psychology is the practice of psychology to help patients. Okay, what we call counseling in our normal language. Part philosophical speculation means philosophical thought, and part clinical observation. So psychoanalysis is based partly on philosophy and partly on clinical observation of the different cases or patients. The psychoanalytic movement and its later descendants, okay, later forms which were inspired by psychoanalysis, have done much to reveal the dynamics of the human psyche. So psychoanalysis has helped us to understand the working of the human mind. Dynamics is working or the various changes of the human psyche. Psyche is the mind in much of its complexity. Okay, and to alleviate is to reduce or make better, to alleviate human suffering and to reveal the nature of psychopathology. Pathology means disease. Psychopathology is mental illnesses. Okay, so these are the applications of psychoanalysis. They helped us understand the human psyche, understand its complexity, to alleviate or mitigate, to reduce human suffering, and to understand mental illnesses. Yet, so again now a contrast word shows they are talking of the weaknesses. This approach to psychology, being primarily concerned with the dynamics of the conscious and the unconscious mind, has not overtly means openly, dealt with the higher realms or superconscious dimensions of the human psyche and the spiritual domains of human life in its theoretical framework. So, the first school, scientific psychology, only looked at observable behavior. This psychoanalysis looked at the conscious and the unconscious mind, but not what they call the superconscious, beyond the unconscious, okay, and spiritual domains. The middle of the 20th century witnessed radical and profound shifts in the direction of Western psychology, with scientific psychology disregarding the inner dimension of human life. That was the weakness of scientific psychology. And with psychodynamic models, that is psychoanalytics, overemphasis on the importance of the unconscious forces, neither school in isolation nor in combination. Neither of these two schools, scientific or psychoanalytic schools, either taken separately or together, seemed to provide a satisfactory framework for understanding the whole human being. This was the weakness of both of these. The third force, or humanistic, this is the third one, humanistic psychology, grew in partially in reaction to the shortcomings of the hitherto mentioned systems, the weaknesses of the first two systems, as well as a beginning response to the influence of Eastern psycho-spiritual traditions. It was also partially in response to Eastern psychological and spiritual traditions in the newly evolving interface or interaction between East and the West in the United States. Okay. In the 1950s and 60s, Maslow and others began to shift the attention of psychology from a pathologistic and reductionistic focus. Okay, so the attention of psychology shifted from a focus on pathology and reductionistic. Reductionistic is to reduce it to basic terms, to that of an exploration of the higher reaches of the human mind and the undiscovered human potentials and their actualization. So we spoke now of the superconscious and spiritual dimensions. So Maslow and others in this humanistic school began to focus on these dimensions. In the mid-1960s, yet another force began to grow out of the humanistic movement. This fourth force, or the transpersonal movement, was a direct result of the influence of Eastern spiritual traditions such as Buddhism, Taoism, Sufism and Hinduism. Okay, the fourth transpersonal movement was a result of the influence of Eastern spiritual traditions on the humanistic psychology movement. So the effect of these on humanistic movement is what led to transpersonal movement. Although transpersonal psychology can be traced back to Carl Jung and Roberto Assagioli's work some 3 decades earlier, it was not until the late 1960s that this movement became popular in parts of the US and Europe and slowly began to spread to certain other parts of the world. So this movement became popular in the late 1960s, though it has its origins much earlier. Transpersonal psychology has undergone substantial developments and changes since its earlier days. Yet despite attempts on the part of Ken Wilber, so Ken Wilber must be part of this transpersonal psychology, to create a comprehensive system or master template, it still remains a body of diverse developments without a unified underlying philosophical vision. So this is the weakness of this school of thought, that it is still a body of diverse developments, different developments in different parts of the world maybe, without any uniformity. Okay, the cardinal contribution, the main contribution of transpersonal psychology has been the inclusion of the spiritual dimension. Okay, this is the main contribution of into the larger picture of psychological inquiry, primarily through importing and borrowing from mystical and spiritual traditions. So the main contribution is the inclusion of spiritual dimension, which was inspired by both Eastern and Western as well as indigenous traditions around the world. Okay, indigenous is local to a particular place. One important weakness of transpersonal psychology is its relative disregard for cross-cultural issues. So one weakness here was that it still is very different in different parts of the world, and the other one is its disregard for cross-cultural issues. That is, when Eastern spirituality is absorbed into Western psychology, there can be cultural issues, and that is not addressed by this school. Okay, so we spoke of the 4 different forces in the development of Western psychology, right? Each force I'm sure you remember. So let us look at the questions. Psychoanalysis as understood from the passage, let us see which of the following is true, is used for treatments of psychiatric problems of people. Yes, it is used in clinical psychology and it is used in psychopathology. Right, so this should be correct. Influence the development of only clinical psychology? No, it influenced both theoretical and clinical psychology. Employs a pathologistic focus. It is actually focused on psychopathology. Pathology would be generally diseases. It doesn't say it employs a pathologistic focus. Right, it says that it helps us to understand psychopathology, right? So, the nature of psychopathology. We can't say it has a pathologistic focus. Considers subconscious mind for analysis. No, it only considers the conscious and unconscious mind, not subconscious mind. If you are not sure, just go and check. Okay. So, the right answer is option 1. Next question. Some of the Eastern spiritual traditions played a major role in shaping one of the following movements. Which one? Yes, I am sure you remember. Transpersonal movement, not any of the others. That is a very direct question. Eastern spiritual traditions like Buddhism, Taoism helped to shape transpersonal movement. The first force of the development of the Western psychology, that is the scientific psychology. So all these options are about scientific psychology. We have to see which one is or which ones are true. Neglected the inner dimension of human life. Yes, it focused on the outer dimension. This is correct. It was dependent upon empirical evidence, that is mentioned. Did not bestow any special status on man and considered him to be one among many entities of nature. It is mentioned that it considered man to be like any other natural phenomena. Right? So, this is also correct. So, what is our answer? All of the above. All of the above is our right answer. Okay. Transpersonal psychology, the fourth one, focuses on higher states of consciousness. Yes, it focuses on higher states of consciousness. It is mentioned in the passage, right? Here. It focuses on the, where has it mentioned? That it focuses on the spiritual dimension. Okay? The higher levels of human consciousness. Fails to take cross-cultural issues into consideration. Yes, this is one of the weaknesses of transpersonal psychology. Comes to the aid of Western philosophers who are keen on integrating into their philosophy one or more Eastern psycho-spiritual disciplines. Yes, this is also correct because it here says that it integrated various Eastern and Western disciplines, right? Psycho-spiritual disciplines has been mentioned in various parts of the passage. So, the answer is all of the above. And the last question, humanistic psychology grew partly as a result of the influence of Eastern psycho-spiritual tradition. Yes, it is mentioned in the passage. Did away with the shortcomings of the earlier systems. Did away means it completely removed. No, it came in response to the shortcomings of the earlier systems. It was a product of Maslow's efforts. No, Maslow was one of the people who practiced this. Failed to consider any other sources of spiritual text. That is not mentioned. Spirituality is not mentioned. In fact, it did have some spirituality is the fourth approach, of course, but it did say that psychoanalysis humanistic psychology originated, right, partly in response to psycho-spiritual traditions. So, the spiritual texts are not mentioned there, right? So, this is also not correct. The answer is option 1, grew partly as a result of the influence of Eastern psycho-spiritual tradition. Okay. So, we have finished discussing 5 passages. I hope you found this discussion useful. Keep practicing. All the best for your exam. Thank you.